Hello students, today we are going to discuss about drug addiction or drug abuse. As you are aware of, this is a part of your lesson on diseases. So drug addiction, what do you mean by drug addiction or drug abuse? So first important thing, we have to define this term, that is drug addiction or drug abuse. It is taking drugs for purpose other than clinical use. Well, when somebody falls sick, he goes to doctor and doctor gives some medicine, and this is what also known as drug. But taking drugs for purpose other than clinical use in amount, concentration or frequency that impair physical, physiological and psychological function of the body is what is known by, we understand by the term drug addiction. So when somebody takes a drug not as per the amount prescribed in the clinical use by the physician, concentration may be more or different, and frequency may be taking it very often, and it affects the physical, physiological or psychological functions of the body. It is called drug addiction. Here body can't survive without this after a particular time. When we talk of various types, three main types have been identified. Number one, opioids, alkaloids, and lastly, equally important is the third one, cannabinoids. Basically, more or less, these drugs are obtained from the plants, the flowering plants or plants as such. So let us see first what is opiate uh, narcotics or opioids. Uh, the first important thing is that they reduce. Opioids are medications that relieve pain. So when you take these things, pain is reduced. So that is how person feels that probably he is better off. He's better. Number one. Secondly, uh, as shown, opioids are the drugs derived from dried latex of unripe capsular fruits of poppy plant. Well, you have heard of this plant, name of this plant. So this poppy plant is here quite useful in this context, I should say. And the name of the plant is Papaver somniferum. Besides these chemicals or these substances, there are few synthetic parts, drugs are also available. So along with poppy plant, some synthetic relatives, all this comes under the broad category of drugs, that is opioids. Now one more thing which I want to place to your notice is that though majority of these are obtained from flowering plants, but some are obtained from fungi also. We'll also be studying few drugs which are obtained from fungi. So first thing comes is the opiate narcotics or opioids. Now when we take these opioids, or a person takes opioids, so what exactly it does? Opioids bind to specific opioid receptors present in our central nervous system and also gastrointestinal tract. So there are two areas which are important here. One are brain, central nervous system, and second the gastrointestinal tract. So there they get attached. They are attached. Opioid receptors are a group of inhibitory G protein coupled receptors with opioids as ligands. They are distributed widely in the brain and also found in the spinal cord and digestive tract, as I've just referred to. Now this Papaver somniferum, the opium poppy, is a species of a flowering plant. The family is Papaveraceae. If you see the flower, it looks like it's a beautiful flower. Otherwise, it's grown in the gardens also, but of course misused also. Just see it, how it looks like. This is a poppy plant showing various flowers. So this part here, it is actually the fruit part, which once flower reaches this stage, this fruit part is given a cut here, and subsequently you find this white sort of a juice oozing out from this fruit. So from here it is dried and somehow it is prepared into this particular drug, which is very dangerous, as we find subsequently. Now these substances are also called painkillers. Opiates have narcotic value. Of course, you can say narcotic means they compound with the sleep inducing properties. Then they are analgesic, that is a painkiller. then astringent, that causes contraction of body parts, and sedative effect it also has got. Sedation is the basically reduction of irritability or agitation as such. Body feels I mean not that irritated if somebody takes this. So these drugs are narcotic, analgesic, astringent, and sedative effect. So this is how we place this particular drug. Now, which are the various types of opiate narcotics? If you see in this here, we find various types. So types of opiate narcotics broadly classified into three types: natural opiates, semi-synthetic opiates, and synthetic opiates. In natural opiates, we find opium as such, morphine, codeine. In semi-synthetic opiates, we got heroin, which is actually uh, diacetyl morphine. Then we also got here the smack as such, smack here. Then in synthetic opiates, we have got pethidine, of course, mepridine is the name, another name, and then is the methadone. So this is the opium plants basically, and semi-synthetic and synthetic opiates. That is how they are, in a sort of a broad classification that we study like this. So after opioids, let us see D, that is the coca alkaloids. Now this coca alkaloids, very common is the cocaine. Cocaine is a natural coca alkaloid obtained from leaves of coca plant. It's a plant, coca plant. The name of the plant is Erythroxylum coca. It is a native to South America. And cocaine has vasoconstrictor properties, and therefore is a good local anesthetic value it has got. It's a good local anesthesia. Now it is a powerful central nervous system stimulant, interferes with the transport of the neurotransmitter dopamine. You have heard of various neurotransmitters, which are there in the brain, acetylcholine, dopamine, like that. So dopamine is one where we find it interferes with the transport of this neurotransmitter, that is dopamine, and induces a sense of well-being. Person feels that he's okay, and pleasure, and delays fatigue. You don't, I mean, one doesn't feel tired. Uh, Now its overdose causes hallucinations. Now this is Erythroxylum coca, the plant from which this drug is obtained. Now what is hallucination? If you see this term hallucination, it is a sensory experience of something that does not exist outside the mind. It's only in the mind. You don't find things actually existing. Caused by various physical and mental disorders, or by reaction to certain toxic substances. So this substance causes hallucination, the sensation caused by a hallucinatory condition, or as a sort of a delusion we find here. Now when we say constrictor, cocaine has vasoconstrictor property. What is this vasoconstriction? Now, vasoconstriction is the narrowing of blood vessel resulting from contraction of the muscular wall of the vessels, in particular the large arteries and small arterioles. The process is opposite of vasodilation. In vasodilation, actually there is an expansion, but in this vasoconstriction, it is contraction. So the process is particularly important in staunching hemorrhage and acute blood loss. So here we find this is how this term vasoconstriction is defined. Next category of substances, they are hemp, or as the name is, the cannabis. Here we find. Now the third type, that is hemp or cannabis compounds, also hallucinogenic chemicals. They are obtained from leaves, resin and flowering tops, that is inflorescence of hemp or Cannabis sativa. Again, the equivalent of name is Cannabis indica. This category of substances which are obtained from this plant, that is Cannabis sativa here, they come under the category of hemp or cannabis compounds. Now the flower, tops, leaves and resins of cannabis plants are used in various combinations to produce hashish, ganja, bhang and marijuana. So these cannabinoid cannabinoids, basically how they really go into the body as such. So they interact with cannabinoid receptors present mainly in the brain. So that is how they are they affect our brain or body. Now this cannabis as such is a genus which has got three subspecies: Stiva, indica and ruderalis. So the plant is this plant is indigenous to Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent, very common in our country. Other well-known plants with these properties, that is hallucinogenic properties, are Atrofa, Belladonna and Datura. You must have heard of these. The drugs on which an individual becomes dependent are called addictive drugs. We say that he has got addiction. So addiction is, what is this addiction? So when somebody uses one of these drugs and gets he is depending on these drugs, then the condition is called addiction. And these drugs, they are called addictive drugs. Now these drugs in broader could be classified as given two types, rather I should say. One is psychotropic drugs and second is called psychedelic drugs or hallucinogen as such. Number one, that is the psychotropic drugs. These are mood altering drugs which selectively affect behavior, perception and mental activity of a person using them. So basically here we find that they alter the mood of the person who is taking these drugs. Then subsequently it affects the behavior also, his perception and then mental activity too. When we say of types, broadly there are four types: sedatives, tranquilizers, stimulants and opiates. So sedatives, tranquilizers, stimulants and opiates. Already we have studied these, about a few of these of opiates, and we have already studied. So you find this in this table all the four types and various examples and functions also. First we have drug type, followed by the example for the same, then the function or functions as such, and then how body reacts, the withdrawal symptoms. So the first drug type which is important here is the sedative and tranquilizers. Now in these sedatives and tranquilizers, now let's see what is this sedation. What do you mean by this term sedative, and how really we place this term sedative? Now sedative basically is a drug that calms a patient. Patient calms down, easing agitation. If he's in agitated mind, he feels slightly eased out, and then it allows sleep. So sedatives generally work by modulating signals within the central nervous system. So it has got a sort of a soothing effect, if we take it that way, it looks like. Then what are these tranquilizers? Now tranquilizer is a drug that is used to reduce anxiety. Tranquilizer here, anxiety, fear, tension, agitation. So you find they are reduced and related to such mental disturbance. So the sedative and tranquilizers, as we see here, they appear to be very useful here. But then if and doctors at times prescribe these few of these chemicals as medicine. But as we have in the beginning we have studied that anything which is beyond a particular level of frequency or as not prescribed by a physician is what comes under the category of drugs. So in the sedatives and tranquilizer, the first important category is barbiturates. Now this barbiturates, withdrawal symptom is of course epileptic. Firstly, they are derivatives of barbituric acid. They are antidepressant drugs. They person comes out from this depression. Thirdly, reduce anxiety and induce sleep. Continuous use may cause permanent damage to brain and lead to coma. So if often when doctors prescribe something like that, or not of this category, some other category also, then may be useful. But then if taken permanently, continuously what somebody takes, then it is very harmful, affects brain straight, and one may get into the state of coma.